The sound is wrong. That's the first thing Lieutenant Friedrich Weber notices. June 7th, 1944. Normandy, one day after D-Day, and Weber, 26 years old, from Hamburg, commanding a platoon of the 352nd Infantry Division, is dug in, hedgerow position, waiting for the Americans, and he hears it, gunfire. But it's not the crack, crack, crack of bolt-action rifles. Slow, deliberate, like he's used to. It's continuous, rapid, like machine gun fire, but lighter, different cadence, and Weber thinks machine guns. The Americans are attacking with machine guns. He signals his squad, prepare for assault, wait for them to reload. Standard tactics. Machine gunners run out of ammunition. That's when you counterattack. So Weber waits, and the firing continues 10 seconds, 15, 20. Still firing. And Weber realizes, those aren't machine guns. Those are rifles. But that's impossible. Rifles don't fire that fast, don't sustain that rate, unless... And then Weber remembers. The intelligence briefings, back in April, before Normandy, the intelligence officer Hauptmann Dietrich talking about American rifles, the M1 Garand, semi-automatic, 8-round clip, and Hauptmann Dietrich had said, reports indicate the Americans can fire 30 rounds per minute, per man, with rifles, and the room, full of Wehrmacht officers, had laughed. 30 rounds per minute, with a rifle? That's impossible, that's propaganda, American exaggeration. And Dietrich had shrugged, said, that's what the reports say. And everyone dismissed it, because it sounded absurd. But now, Weber, crouched in a hedgerow, listening to continuous rifle fire, realizes it's not propaganda, it's real. And his men, armed with carabiner 98s, bolt-action rifles, 15 rounds per minute, maximum, they're outgunned. Badly. And Weber watches as his squad, trying to return fire, gets shredded, because they fire once, work the bolt, chamber another round, fire again, and in that time, the Americans fire 4 times, 5 times, 6 times, and Weber's men are dying, fast. And Weber realizes, we're not fighting soldiers with rifles, we're fighting soldiers with automatic weapons, and we have no answer. That moment, June 7th, 1944, Friedrich Weber's realization, it's happening all across Normandy, all across the Western Front, German soldiers encountering American infantry for the first time, realizing we underestimated them. We dismissed intelligence. We laughed at reports, and now we're paying for it, in blood. And by the end of the war, the M1 Garand, this rifle that Wehrmacht officers joked about, this rifle they dismissed as propaganda, will have killed, estimates vary, roughly 50,000 German soldiers. 50,000. More than any other American infantry weapon. And the question is, how? How did Germany, this military power, this experienced army, underestimate a rifle so badly that it cost them 50,000 lives? And the answer reveals something about arrogance, about intelligence failure, about how wars are lost, not just on battlefields, but in briefing rooms where officers dismiss reports because they don't fit their assumptions, and those assumptions they kill. Let me tell you about the M1 Garand, because to understand this story, you need to understand the weapon. Designed by John Garand, Canadian-American engineer, adopted by the US military, 1936. Production starts 1937, and the M1 Garand is revolutionary. It's semi-automatic, gas-operated. Every time you pull the trigger, it fires, automatically ejects the spent casing, chambers the next round, ready to fire again. You don't work a bolt, don't manually reload after each shot, just pull the trigger 8 times, and then the en-bloc clip ejects. With a distinctive ping, and you reload, insert a new 8-round clip, and fire again, 30 rounds per minute. easily. Trained soldiers can do 40, 45, and the rifle is reliable, accurate, effective range 500 yards, weight 9.5 pounds, heavier than bolt-action rifles, but the firepower changes infantry combat, fundamentally. Now, compare this to the German Karabiner 98, Mauser design, bolt-action, 5-round internal magazine, and the Kar 98 is excellent for a bolt-action rifle, accurate, reliable, effective range similar to the Garand, but rate of fire 15 rounds per minute, maximum, skilled soldiers, and that's the difference. 15 versus 30, or 15 versus 40, that's double, or triple, the rate of fire. And in infantry combat, rate of fire matters, suppression matters. If you're under continuous fire, you can't move, can't maneuver, can't counterattack, you're pinned. And American infantry, armed with Garands, they can suppress German infantry continuously, while German infantry, armed with Kar 98s, they can't suppress back, because their fire is too slow, too intermittent, and that difference, that fundamental difference, it determines who wins firefights and who dies. Let me tell you about pre-war intelligence, because this is where the failure starts. 1936. The M1 Garand is adopted, and it's not a secret. American military journals publish articles, technical specifications, photos, and German intelligence, the Abwehr, they collect this information, send reports to Wehrmacht leadership, and the reports say the Americans have adopted a semi-automatic rifle, standard issue, for all infantry, and this represents a significant tactical advantage. Rate of fire doubled or tripled compared to bolt-action rifles, and Wehrmacht leadership reads these reports and dismisses them. Why? Because it doesn't fit their assumptions. German military doctrine in the 1930s emphasizes quality over quantity, precision over firepower, and the Kar 98 represents that philosophy. Accurate, reliable, and German soldiers are trained to make every shot count, aimed fire, disciplined fire, and German officers believe that's superior to American spray and pray. Even if Americans fire faster, they're wasting ammunition, hitting nothing. German soldiers, firing slower, are hitting targets. That's the assumption. And that assumption, it's wrong, but it's comfortable. And German officers believe it, because it confirms their superiority. And dismissing contrary evidence is easier than adapting. Now, let me tell you about early encounters. North Africa, 1942. Operation Torch, American forces land, and they're equipped with M1 Garands. And German forces, Afrika Korps, they encounter American infantry. And German after-action reports describe intense American rifle fire, unexpected volume, and German soldiers report difficulty maneuvering under American fire, because the fire is continuous. But these reports, they're not taken seriously. Why? Because the Afrika Korps is fighting in the desert, open terrain, and German officers assume American firepower works in the desert, but won't work in Europe, in forests, in hedgerows, in close terrain. So the reports are noted and filed and forgotten, and no tactical adaptations are made. Sicily, Italy, 1943, American forces advance, and again, German forces report heavy American rifle fire, continuous, difficult to counter, and again, Wehrmacht leadership dismisses it, attributes it to American numerical superiority, or poor German morale, or specific battlefield conditions. Anything except the Americans have better rifles, because admitting that means admitting German equipment is inferior, and that's ideologically unacceptable. Nazi ideology emphasizes German superiority, German engineering, German discipline. Can't admit that American rifles are better, so the evidence is dismissed, and German soldiers continue fighting with bolt-action rifles against semi-automatic rifles and dying in increasing numbers. Let me tell you about the intelligence briefing. April 1944, 7th Army Headquarters, Normandy, preparing for the expected Allied invasion, and Hauptmann Dietrich, intelligence officer, gives a briefing about American equipment, and he covers tanks, artillery, aircraft, and then rifles. And Dietrich says, according to captured American manuals, the M1 Garand can fire 30 to 40 rounds per minute. This is standard issue, every American infantryman. And he shows photos, technical diagrams, and the room full of Wehrmacht officers reacts. Some laugh, some shake their heads, and Oberst Hoffmann, regimental commander, says 30 rounds per minute with a rifle. That's propaganda, American morale-building exaggeration. Our Kar-98 fires 15 rounds per minute, and our soldiers are better trained, better disciplined. So even if the Americans fire faster, we'll win through superior tactics. And the room agrees. Murmurs of assent, and Dietrich tries to explain, says, this isn't propaganda, this is verified by multiple sources. But Hoffmann cuts him off, says, Hauptmann, your job is to provide information. Our job is to interpret it. And we interpret this as exaggeration. Dismissed, and the briefing moves on, and no tactical changes are made, no adaptations. German soldiers will fight American infantry using tactics designed for bolt-action warfare against semi-automatic rifles. And they'll die, because their commanders dismissed the intelligence. Now, let me tell you about D-Day, June 6th, 1944. American forces land, Omaha Beach, Utah Beach, and German defenders, they're ready. Fortified positions, machine gun nests, artillery, and American infantry, they advance, under fire, taking casualties, and German soldiers watching through binoculars, they think, this is working. The Americans are dying. We can hold. But then American infantry gets close, within rifle range, 200 yards, 300 yards, and they open fire. And German soldiers, they've never heard anything like it. The volume of fire. Continuous, overwhelming, and German positions, even fortified positions, they're getting suppressed, pinned down, can't return effective fire. Because every time a German soldier raises his head to shoot, he's met with multiple rounds immediately, and German soldiers start dying fast. And by the end of D-Day, German casualty reports are higher than expected, and officers start asking why. What's different? And soldiers tell them the American rifles, they fire continuously, like machine guns, and officers, they don't believe it. Attribute it to exaggeration, battle stress, can't be the rifles. Let me tell you about Private Robert Schultz, 1st Infantry Division, D-Day. And Schultz, 22 years old, from Iowa, is carrying an M1 Garand, and he's trained on it. Hundreds of rounds, practice. And on June 6th, advancing inland from Omaha Beach, Schultz's squad encounters German positions. Hedgerow, maybe 50 yards away. And Schultz's sergeant says, suppressing fire. Now, and Schultz and his squad, they open fire. And Schultz, he fires 8 rounds, reloads, fires 8 more, reloads, fires 8 more, 24 rounds in maybe 30 seconds. And the German position, they're not firing back because they're pinned, can't raise their heads. And Schultz's squad advances, closes, and captures the position. And Schultz looks at the Germans, 3 of them, surrendering, and their rifles bolt action, Kar-98s. And Schultz realizes these guys didn't have a chance. They couldn't fire back fast enough. We overwhelmed them. And that's the war. For Schultz, for American infantry, overwhelming German positions with firepower and advancing, while Germans, they can't keep up. Now, let me tell you about German tactical adaptation, or the lack of it. After D-Day, after weeks of fighting, German commanders start realizing the Americans have a firepower advantage at the squad level, and they need to adapt. So what do? They increase machine gun allocation, assign more MG-42s to infantry squads. The idea is machine guns can match American rifle firepower, and this works, partially. But it creates problems, because machine guns are heavy, require crew-served operation, and they're less mobile. So German squads become slower, less flexible, and American squads, armed with Garands, they're more mobile, more flexible, and they outmaneuver German squads, even though Germans have more machine guns, and German casualties continue rising. Here's the other adaptation. German infantry doctrine changes, emphasis on defensive positions, fortifications. The idea is, if we're dug in, American firepower is less effective, and this works better. But it means German forces lose offensive capability, can't attack, can only defend. And defending in 1944 against overwhelming Allied resources, it's a losing strategy. Slow, inevitable, but losing. And German officers know this, but they have no other options. Because their infantry, armed with bolt-action rifles, can't fight American infantry in open combat, can't win firefights, so they dig in. And hope? Let me tell you about Lieutenant Friedrich Weber. Again, because his story continues. June through August 1944, Weber's unit fights in Normandy, hedgerow to hedgerow, and every engagement is the same. Americans open fire. Continuous, overwhelming. Weber's men try to return fire. Can't. Get pinned, and casualties mount, and Weber, he's losing men every day, and he writes letters to headquarters requesting semi-automatic rifles or more machine guns or any solution, and headquarters responds, make do with what you have. No semi-automatic rifles are available, and Weber realizes, we're doomed, we can't win like this, and in August, Weber's unit is nearly destroyed, near Falaise, encircled by American and British forces, and Weber, with the survivors, surrenders, and he's captured, becomes a POW, and in his interrogation, American intelligence officers ask, what was the most effective American weapon? And Weber, without hesitation, says, the M1 rifle. Not the tanks, not the artillery, the rifle. Because it changed infantry combat, made your soldiers superior, and we had no answer. That testimony, it's in declassified American intelligence files, and Weber's not alone. Hundreds of captured German soldiers, when asked about effective American weapons, they cite the M1 Garand, more than any other weapon, and American intelligence compiles these testimonies, and they conclude the M1 Garand provides American infantry with a decisive tactical advantage at the squad and platoon level, and this advantage, it's responsible for significant German casualties and lower American casualties, because American infantry can suppress German infantry, while German infantry can't suppress back. And that difference, it's measurable in casualty ratios, in battle outcomes, in territory gained. Now, let me tell you about the numbers, because this is important. Total M1 Garand production, World War II, roughly 4 million, and of those, roughly 2.5 million deployed to combat theatres. Europe, Pacific, and American infantrymen, they're armed with Garands. Universally, every rifleman, and German casualty records, declassified, show in the Western Front, June 1944 through May 1945, German infantry casualties from rifle fire. roughly 120,000. 120,000, and estimates, based on ammunition expenditure, battlefield reports, and captured German testimony, suggest roughly 40 to 50% of those casualties were from M1 Garands. 40 to 50%. That's 50 to 60,000. And even taking the conservative estimate, that's 50,000 German soldiers. Killed or wounded by M1 Garands, 50,000. More than any other American infantry weapon. More than machine guns, more than mortars. Just rifles. And that's the impact. That's what Wehrmacht officers dismissed, joked about, in April 1944, and by May 1945, 50,000 of their soldiers are casualties because of that rifle. Let me tell you about the technical differences in detail, because this matters. The Kar 98, it's a Mauser action. Turn bolt, lift the bolt handle, pull back, eject the spent casing, push forward, chamber a new round, lower the bolt handle, lock, aim, fire. That's maybe 4 seconds. For a trained soldier, 3 seconds if you're fast. That's 15 rounds per minute. The M1 Garand, pull the trigger. The gas system cycles the action, ejects, chambers, ready. Pull the trigger again. That's under 1 second. Between shots, 30 rounds per minute, easily, and the implications, they're massive. In a firefight, an American squad, 12 men, armed with Garands, can fire 360 rounds per minute. 360. A German squad, 12 men, armed with Kar 98s, can fire 180 rounds per minute. 180, half. And in suppression, in maneuver, in close combat, that difference is overwhelming. Here's a specific tactical scenario. Ambush, American squad, German squad, equal numbers, equal cover. The Americans open fire first, 8 seconds. Each man fires 8 rounds, 96 rounds total, downrange, toward German positions. The Germans try to return fire, but they're suppressed, can't aim, can't shoot effectively. They fire maybe 1 or 2 rounds per man, total 20 rounds, in those same 8 seconds, and the Americans reload, continue firing, and the Germans, they're pinned, can't move, can't advance, can't retreat effectively, and the Americans maneuver, flank, close, and win. That's the tactical reality, and it happens hundreds of times, thousands of times, across Normandy, across France, across Germany, and German soldiers die because their rifles are too slow. Now, let me tell you about the German soldier's perspective, because this is critical. German infantry, they're well-trained, experienced, disciplined, and they know their Kar 98s. Trust them, accurate, reliable. But when they face American infantry, they realize accuracy doesn't matter. If you can't fire fast enough, you can hit your target every shot. But if the enemy fires 3 times for every shot you take, they'll hit you, eventually, through volume. And German soldiers describe in letters, in diaries, frustration, fear. We can't fight them. They fire too fast. We're outgunned, and morale suffers. Because soldiers know they're fighting with inferior weapons, and their commanders, their officers, they dismissed the warnings, laughed at intelligence, and now soldiers are paying the price. Let me tell you about Gefreiter Hans Becker, 18 years old, from Munich, drafted 1943, assigned to the Western Front 1944, and Becker, in a letter to his mother, written in July 1944, describes his experience. He writes, "The Americans, they have rifles that fire like machine guns. Continuous. We can't return fire effectively. Every time we try, they shoot back immediately. Multiple times. And our Kar 98, it's too slow. I fire once, work the bolt, and in that time, the American fires 3 times, 4 times, and my friends are dying. Franz was shot last week, Klaus 2 days ago." And I'm afraid, not because Americans are better soldiers, but because they have better weapons. And we don't. And I don't understand why. Why did Command not give us better rifles? Why do we have to fight with old equipment against new? And I'm angry, not at Americans, at our leaders, who sent us here with inferior weapons, and now we're dying. That letter, it was found in American archives. Becker was killed, August 1944, near Falaise, age 18, shot 3 times, by an M1 Garand, and his letter, it represents thousands of others. German soldiers writing home, complaining about American firepower, about inferior German equipment, about officers who ignored warnings, and those letters, they're heartbreaking, because these soldiers, they're not cowards, they're not incompetent, they're just outgunned by a weapon their commanders dismissed, joked about, and they paid with their lives. Now, let me tell you about American training, because this is part of the story. American soldiers, before deployment, they train on the M1 Garand extensively, hundreds of rounds, familiarization, marksmanship, maintenance, and they learn to shoot fast, accurately, and they practice squad tactics, suppressing fire, maneuver, coordinated attacks, and by the time they deploy, American infantry squads are effective, well coordinated, and armed with Garands, they're deadly, and German soldiers facing them, they describe American infantry as aggressive, mobile, confident, because American soldiers know they have firepower advantage and they use it. They suppress German positions, advance, flank, close, and win. And that confidence, that aggression, it's rooted in equipment, in the M1 Garand and the firepower it provides. Let me tell you about General George Patton, because his opinion matters. Patton called the M1 Garand the greatest battle implement ever devised. Greatest. And Patton's not prone to exaggeration. He's seen combat, knows weapons, and he believes the M1 Garand is the best infantry rifle in the world. And he's right. In World War II, no other nation has a standard-issue semi-automatic rifle. Germany uses bolt-action, Britain uses bolt-action, Soviet Union uses bolt-action, Japan uses bolt-action. Only America equips every infantryman with semi-automatic rifles. And that gives American infantry a decisive edge at the tactical level. And Patton knows this, uses it. His infantry, they advance faster, fight more aggressively, because they can, because their weapons allow it. Now, let me tell you about the M1 Garand's weaknesses, because it's not perfect. It's heavy, 9.5 pounds, heavier than bolt-action rifles. And the N-block clip system, it's problematic. You can't top off, can't add rounds to a partially full clip. You have to fire all 8 rounds, or eject the clip, waste ammunition. And the clip ejection, the ping, it's distinctive. And German soldiers learn to listen for it. Wait for the ping. That means the American is reloading. That's when you attack, and some American soldiers die, because Germans time their attacks. Wait for reloads. But overall, the advantages outweigh the disadvantages. The firepower, the reliability, the semi-automatic action, it's superior, and American infantry knows it and uses it. Let me tell you about post-war analysis, because after the war, military historians study infantry combat, and they conclude the M1 Garand was the most significant infantry weapon innovation of World War II. More significant than submachine guns, more significant than improved machine guns, because it changed standard infantry tactics, made every rifleman effectively an automatic weapon, and that changed how infantry fights, how infantry moves, how infantry wins, and German forces, they never adapted, never countered, because they couldn't. They didn't have semi-automatic rifles didn't have production capacity, didn't have time, and by the time they realized the problem, it was too late. The war was lost, and 50,000 German soldiers were dead because their commanders dismissed intelligence, laughed at reports, and failed to adapt. Here's the broader lesson. Intelligence matters, even if it contradicts your assumptions, especially if it contradicts your assumptions, because assumptions, they're comfortable. They confirm what you believe, but reality doesn't care about your beliefs, and dismissing intelligence because it's uncomfortable, because it challenges your worldview, that's fatal in war, in anything. And Wehrmacht officers, they dismissed intelligence about the M1 Garand because it contradicted their beliefs about German superiority, about bolt-action rifles, about American incompetence. And that dismissal, it killed 50,000 of their soldiers and contributed to Germany's defeat. Because wars aren't won by the side with the best assumptions. Wars are won by the side that adapts to reality, fastest, most effectively, and Germany, they didn't. They clung to assumptions, to beliefs, to ideology, and they lost. Let me bring this back to the beginning. The intelligence briefing, April 1944, Hauptmann Dietrich, describing the M1 Garand, 30 rounds per minute, and the room full of Wehrmacht officers laughing, dismissing it as propaganda, as exaggeration, and Oberst Hoffmann saying, "Our soldiers are better trained, better disciplined, will win through superior tactics." That moment, that decision, to dismiss intelligence, to cling to assumptions, it condemned thousands, tens of thousands, to death. Because 2 months later, those officers' soldiers were facing American infantry, armed with Garands, and dying because their commanders were wrong and refused to admit it until it was too late. Lieutenant Friedrich Weber crouched in a hedgerow. June 7th, 1944, listening to continuous rifle fire, realizing the intelligence was right, the reports were accurate, and we dismissed them. We laughed. And now my men are dying because we were arrogant, because we assumed we were superior, and we weren't. That's the truth. Wehrmacht officers joked about US rifles, dismissed them, underestimated them, and then lost 50,000 soldiers to M1 Garands. 50,000. Because arrogance is expensive, and in war, it's paid for in blood.